One brutal twist of a black girl's arm turned an ordinary school cafeteria into a stage for cruelty. While the bullies laughed, live-streamed her pain, and mocked her in front of hundreds of students. The one adult who should have protected her simply stood there and watched. Within hours, an edited video painted her as the villain, and the entire school turned against her. They thought they had buried the truth forever. What none of them knew was that every lie was about to unravel, and the quiet girl they tried to destroy was the daughter of a police captain who believed justice belonged to everyone, not just his own family. Watch until the very end, because the ending will be far more shocking than you expect. Write in the comments where you're watching this video from. The first thing Aaliyah Brooks noticed when she entered the Roosevelt Heights cafeteria was the noise. More than 400 students filled the room, their voices colliding with the clatter of trays, scraping chairs, and the sharp laughter of people who already knew exactly where they belonged. Aaliyah did not. It was her first day, and every table seemed divided by invisible borders. Athletes occupied the center. Popular students gathered near the windows. Everyone else stayed close to familiar faces, carrying a tray with a carton of milk and a barely touched sandwich. Aaliyah chose an empty table near the far wall. She sat quietly, hoping invisibility might buy her one peaceful lunch. It lasted less than a minute. Ethan Walker dropped into the seat across from her without asking. His expensive varsity jacket carried the school emblem, but his smile carried something uglier. Carter Hayes stood beside him, while Brandon Cole lifted his phone and aimed the camera directly at Aaliyah's face. Olivia Grant remained several steps away, already live streaming. Look who thinks she can sit wherever she wants, Ethan said loudly enough for nearby tables to hear. A few students turned. Aaliyah kept her eyes on her tray. The table was empty. She replied. Her calm answer annoyed him more than anger would have. Ethan leaned closer and made a cruel comment about her skin, asking whether the cafeteria lights were bright enough for anyone to see her. Olivia laughed for her viewers. Brandon zoomed in. Carter slapped Aaliyah's milk carton onto the floor, sending white liquid across her shoes. Say something now, he challenged. Aaliyah slowly stood, not to fight, but to leave. That was when Carter moved. He grabbed her wrist, twisted it behind her back, and shoved her toward the edge of the table. Aaliyah gasped as pain shot through her shoulder. Let go, she said, her voice strained but controlled. Carter tightened his grip, performing for the phones around him. Ethan laughed. Olivia turned the live stream closer. Brandon circled them to capture Aaliyah's expression. Then Carter forced her arm higher. A sharp crack echoed through the cafeteria. For several seconds, the entire room fell silent. Aaliyah's knees nearly gave way. Her face tightened, but she refused to scream. Carter released her, and she clutched her shoulder against her chest. The silence should have brought shame. Instead, someone laughed. Then another student joined in. Within moments, the cafeteria erupted as if what they had witnessed were entertainment. Through the crowd came Officer Daniel Pierce, the school resource officer. He had been standing near the main doors, close enough to see everything. Aaliyah looked at him, expecting him to restrain Carter or confiscate the phones. Pierce glanced at Ethan's group, then at the hundreds of watching students. Sit down, had told Aaliyah. Don't make this bigger than it needs to be. She stared at him in disbelief. He twisted my arm. Pierce's expression remained flat. And now it's over. He did not question Carter. He did not ask Brandon to stop recording. He simply ordered everyone back to lunch, as if Aaliyah's pain were an interruption to the schedule. By the time the school nurse helped Aaliyah into the medical office, Brandon's video was already spreading. Olivia added the caption. New girl finally learned her place. Students reposted it before the lunch period ended. Inside the nurse's room, Aaliyah sat pale and rigid while an examination revealed swelling around her shoulder. The nurse warned that the ligament might be torn and told her she needed hospital imaging immediately. Aaliyah said little. She was still trying to understand how more than 400 people had watched her get hurt and how the one adult carrying a badge had treated her like the problem. What no one downstairs realized was that a quiet student sitting on the cafeteria's upper level had filmed the entire attack from beginning to end. The student lowered the phone before anyone noticed and saved the recording without posting it. Meanwhile, in the locker room, Brandon opened his editing app. He deleted Carter's grip, the violent twist, and the moment Aaliyah's shoulder cracked. He kept only the seconds afterward, when she turned toward Ethan's group with pain and fury on her face. By morning, the original truth had vanished from every public screen. Roosevelt Heights saw only a carefully edited version titled, "New Girl Goes Crazy in the Cafeteria." By 8 o'clock the next morning, the edited cafeteria video had already crossed 300,000 views. Brandon Cole had spent the night trimming every frame that showed Carter grabbing Aaliyah's wrist, forcing her arm behind her back, and driving it upward until the sickening crack echoed through the room. What remained was a carefully manufactured lie, Aaliyah rising from her seat, turning toward Ethan's group with fury in her eyes, and shouting while several students backed away. Olivia Grant posted the clip to TikTok and Instagram with the hashtag number #CrazyNewGirl, adding dramatic music and a caption claiming that Aaliyah had attacked Roosevelt Heights students on her first day. Within hours, strangers were insulting her. Students were making reaction videos, and anonymous accounts were calling for her expulsion. By the time Aaliyah entered Principal Rebecca Lawson's office, the school had already decided what she was. Lawson sat behind a polished wooden desk with Assistant Principal Victor Dean beside her. Officer Daniel Pierce stood near the window, his arms folded, wearing the expression of a man who had rehearsed his statement. Aaliyah's injured arm rested in a sling, but no one asked about the swelling beneath it. Lawson turned her laptop around and played Brandon's edited clip. "This is extremely disturbing," she said. Aaliyah watched herself transformed into the aggressor. "That isn't the full video," she replied. "Carter twisted my arm before that." Victor Dean glanced at Pierce. The officer did not hesitate. "She initiated the confrontation," he said. "The boys were trying to calm her down." Aaliyah stared at him. "You saw what happened." Pierce's face remained blank. "I saw you become aggressive." Lawson folded her hands and announced that Aaliyah would be temporarily suspended while the school investigated. Ethan, Carter, Brandon, and Olivia were not suspended. They were not even removed from class. The meeting ended with Lawson warning Aaliyah not to post inflammatory accusations online, as though telling the truth might damage the school more than the attack itself. The punishment followed Aaliyah beyond the principal's office. In every hallway, students raised their phones as she passed. Some laughed. Others moved away as though violence were contagious. In history class, the empty desks around her formed a visible circle. During chemistry, her lab partners whispered to the teacher and asked to switch groups. By lunch, she discovered that her classmates had removed her from the shared study chat and deleted the notes she had contributed the night before. Olivia posted screenshots celebrating the suspension, while Brandon uploaded a slower version of the clip with arrows pointing at Aaliyah's clenched hand. The video was no longer simply entertainment. It had become evidence in the court of public opinion, and the verdict had been delivered before anyone examined the facts. Aaliyah returned home, carrying more than the pain in her shoulder. She carried the knowledge that hundreds of people preferred a polished lie because it was easier to share. Yet deep inside Roosevelt Heights, one person had begun to notice that the official story did not fit the technology. Kevin Morales, the school's IT director, received a routine request from Victor Dean to archive the cafeteria footage. When Kevin opened the security timeline, he found something impossible. Every camera recorded continuously through lunch except the main cafeteria camera. Its footage jumped from 121342 to 121413. Exactly 31 seconds were missing. Kevin checked the backup camera. The same gap appeared. He checked the system health report. There had been no power failure, no damaged cable, and no software crash. The missing interval covered the precise moment Carter had twisted Aaliyah's arm. Kevin closed his office door and pulled up the server access records. A manual deletion would require administrative privileges, and only a handful of employees possessed them. At first, the log appeared normal. Then he noticed a concealed entry buried beneath an automated maintenance command. A 12 p.m. While the cafeteria was still erupting, an administrator account had entered the surveillance server and removed 31 seconds from 2 separate camera feeds. Kevin leaned closer to the screen. The account was not his. It had been accessed from a computer inside the administration wing. He copied the log onto a private drive just as footsteps stopped outside his door. Someone knocked once, then tried the handle. Kevin stared at the evidence glowing on his monitor and understood the real danger. The cameras had never failed. Someone inside Roosevelt Heights had deliberately erased the truth. Mia Foster waited until the final bell before approaching Emma Collins in the school library. She moved nervously between the shelves. Glancing over her shoulder each time, footsteps passed the entrance. Emma, Roosevelt Heights counselor, immediately noticed how tightly Mia held her backpack against her chest. The girl had barely spoken during the previous semester. Yet now, her hands were trembling. I saw what happened in the cafeteria, Mia whispered. Not the edited video. The real thing. Emma led her into a private study room and closed the door. Mia explained that she had been sitting on the upper level when Carter twisted Aaliyah's arm. She had heard the crack. She had seen Officer Pierce watching without intervening. More importantly, Mia had recorded the entire attack on her phone. Emma's expression changed. Do you still have the video? Mia nodded. But before she could unlock her screen, someone knocked sharply on the glass door. Assistant Principal Victor Dean stood outside, watching them. Emma stepped into the hallway and told him they were having a confidential counseling session. Victor smiled without warmth. Be careful what you encourage students to say. He replied, false accusations can ruin lives. When Emma returned, Mia looked even more frightened. She refused to transfer the video at school. Instead, she promised to meet Aaliyah in the parking lot after sunset. When fewer people would be watching, that evening, Aaliyah waited beside her mother's old sedan near the edge of the school parking lot. Her shoulder remained trapped in a sling, and every movement sent a dull ache through her arm. Mia arrived nearly 20 minutes late, wearing a hooded sweatshirt despite the warm air. She handed Aaliyah a small memory card. The full recording is on there, she said, but don't tell anyone I gave it to you. Aaliyah thanked her and asked why she was so afraid. Mia hesitated. Because Ethan's father knows people on the school board, and because Officer Pierce came to my house last year when my brother got into trouble. He remembers everything about my family. Before Aaliyah could ask more, headlights appeared at the far end of the lot. Mia stepped back immediately. I have to go. She hurried toward her parents' car and disappeared before the approaching vehicle reached them. Aaliyah returned home, believing, for the first time since the attack, that the truth might survive. She did not know that less than an hour later, Mia's parents received an anonymous phone call. The caller knew where Mia's father worked, the amount remaining on their mortgage, and the name of her younger brother's elementary school. The message was simple: if Mia testified, her father would lose his job. The next morning, Emma learned that Mia's parents had requested an emergency transfer. No explanation was included. Mia's locker had already been emptied, and her school account had been disabled before first period. Emma went directly to Principal Rebecca Lawson's office. A student came to me with information about the cafeteria assault. She said, now she's disappearing overnight. Someone pressured that family. Lawson barely looked up from her paperwork. Families transfer for many reasons. Emma placed both hands on the desk. She was terrified. Lawson's voice hardened. You are a counselor, not an investigator. Stop creating theories that damage this school. Outside the office, Kevin Morales overheard enough of the argument to understand that Mia's disappearance was connected to the missing security footage. He later found Emma in the library and quietly told her about the 31-second deletion. They agreed not to use school, email, or phones. Someone with administrative access was monitoring the investigation, and neither of them knew how far that person's reach extended. That afternoon, Aaliyah received a message from an unknown number. It contained no text, only an audio file. She put on her headphones and pressed play. At first, there was static and the sound of a car engine. Then she heard Mia's mother crying. A man's voice followed. Low and controlled. If the girl opens her mouth, the whole family loses everything. Her father's job goes first. Another voice asked whether Principal Lawson knew. The man answered, "She knows enough." The recording ended abruptly. Aaliyah replayed it twice, her pulse quickening each time. This was no longer a group of arrogant students trying to escape punishment. Someone had erased surveillance footage, manipulated police testimony, threatened a witness, and forced an entire family out of the school overnight. She saved the audio in 3 separate locations, then stared at the dark screen of her phone. For the first time, Aaliyah understood that the cafeteria attack was only the surface of something much larger. The question was no longer whether Carter had hurt her. The question was, who was powerful enough to make an eyewitness disappear, and what else were they willing to destroy to keep the truth buried? Captain Isaiah Brooks did not learn about his daughter's injury from the school. The nurse, or the officer who had watched it happen, he discovered it at home by accident. Late that evening, after returning from a 14-hour shift at the department, he found a folded prescription receipt beneath a stack of mail on the kitchen counter. The medication was for inflammation and severe pain. The patient's name was Aaliyah Brooks. Isaiah stood perfectly still, reading the line twice before calling her downstairs. Aaliyah appeared wearing an oversized sweatshirt, her injured arm hidden beneath the fabric. She had avoided telling him because she knew what his badge meant in a town where people often confused authority with revenge. "I didn't want you storming into the school," she said quietly. Isaiah's eyes moved to the way she protected her shoulder. "Show me." When she slowly removed the sweatshirt, the bruising had spread from her upper arm toward her collarbone. His face hardened, but his voice remained controlled. "Who did this?" Aaliyah told him everything. The cafeteria, Carter's grip, the edited video, Officer Pierce's refusal to intervene, the suspension, and Mia's sudden transfer. She also played the threatening audio message. Isaiah listened without interrupting. The silence in the room became heavier with every detail. When the recording ended, he did not reach for his service weapon or call the principal. He picked up his keys and said, "We're going to the hospital." At Roosevelt Memorial, the emergency physician ordered an MRI after examining the swelling and limited movement in Aaliyah's shoulder. Isaiah stood beside the examination table while the doctor reviewed the images. The diagnosis was clear: a significant ligament tear caused by forced external rotation and upward pressure. This is not the kind of injury someone gives herself by waving her arms or losing her balance, the physician explained. The arm was restrained and driven beyond its normal range. Aaliyah lowered her eyes. Isaiah asked the doctor to document the mechanism of injury in precise language and preserve every scan. The physician agreed, noting that delayed treatment could have caused permanent instability. That sentence nearly broke Isaiah's composure. He had spent years responding to families after harm had already been done. Yet his own daughter had sat alone with an injury serious enough to threaten the future use of her arm. Still, he refused to turn anger into recklessness. Before leaving, he requested certified copies of the medical report, imaging timestamps, intake notes, and the prescription record. The evidence was now stronger than any edited social media clip. The following morning, Isaiah visited the police department's school resource liaison office in plain clothes. He asked to review Officer Daniel Pierce's incident report, identifying himself only as Aaliyah's parent until the clerk recognized him. The report described the cafeteria attack as a minor verbal disagreement, followed by mutual physical escalation. It claimed Aaliyah had become aggressive and that no significant injury had been observed. Pierce had written that medical assistance was offered but declined. Every sentence contradicted the hospital record and Aaliyah's account. When Pierce entered the office and saw Isaiah holding the report, his confidence faltered for less than a second. "Captain," he said, forcing a professional smile. This got blown out of proportion. Isaiah placed the document on the desk. "You called a torn ligament a minor disagreement?" Pierce shrugged. At the time, she looked fine. Teenagers exaggerate when they're upset. Isaiah's expression did not change. "Did you see Carter Hayes put her arm behind her back?" Pierce paused. "I saw confusion. A crowd. People moving. Did you order him to release her? There wasn't enough time. Did you separate the students?" Pierce's jaw tightened. "I handled it according to my judgment." Then he leaned closer and lowered his voice. "You know how these school incidents are. If we arrest every athlete over a cafeteria scuffle, the whole system collapses." Isaiah said nothing. He turned the report over and examined the electronic certification block. That was when he noticed the timestamp. Officer Pierce had finalized the statement at 1222 p.m. Less than 10 minutes after the attack, and before Aaliyah had even reached the nurse's office. The report also stated that there were no visible injuries and that she had declined medical care. But the nurse's intake record began at 1231. Pierce had written his conclusion before anyone examined her. Isaiah checked the metadata twice, then compared it with the cafeteria schedule and hospital timeline. The lie was not merely inaccurate. It had been prepared in advance, as though Pierce already knew which version of events the school intended to protect. "You completed this report before the medical evaluation," Isaiah said. Pierce glanced toward the timestamp and went pale. "The system sometimes autofills." Isaiah knew it did not. "No," he replied. "It records when you certify the statement." Pierce reached for the paper, but Isaiah moved it out of his reach. "You should be careful, Captain," Pierce said, abandoning courtesy. "This could look like you're using your position to help your daughter." Isaiah met his eyes. "That is exactly why I won't investigate it." Back at home, Aaliyah expected her father to call Principal Lawson, demand an apology, or arrive at Roosevelt Heights in uniform. Instead, Isaiah arranged the evidence across the dining table: the MRI report, the prescription receipt, Pierce's statement, its timestamp, Mia's recording, and screenshots of the edited video. He explained that his rank created a conflict of interest. He could not command the investigation, interview witnesses, or decide who should be charged. But he could make sure the case entered a process the school could not quietly control. Aaliyah watched him dial a number marked for the department's Internal Affairs Division. When Detective Monica Reyes answered, Isaiah identified himself and spoke with the restraint of an officer, reporting another officer, not the fury of a father seeking revenge. "I need to report suspected misconduct by a school resource officer," he said. "Possible false reporting, failure to intervene, évidente suppression, and witness intimidation connected to the assault of a minor." He paused, looking at Aaliyah. "The minor is my daughter, so I am formally recusing myself from every investigative decision." Within the hour, Internal Affairs opened a preliminary case and ordered the preservation of Pierce's body camera files, dispatch records, report metadata, school surveillance logs, and all communications between the officer and Roosevelt Heights administrators. Pierce received the preservation notice before noon. Principal Lawson received a separate demand instructing her not to delete ITA or transfer any evidence related to the cafeteria incident. For the first time, the people who had controlled the story were no longer investigating themselves. Aaliyah stood by the window as unmarked vehicles arrived outside the school administration building. Isaiah placed a reassuring hand on her uninjured shoulder. "This is not about what my badge can do," he told her. "It is about what their records will prove." Across town, Officer Pierce stared at the internal affairs notice on his screen, then immediately called someone inside Roosevelt Heights. The official investigation had begun, and whoever had erased 31 seconds of footage now had very little time left to hide the rest. Kevin Morales knew something was wrong the moment Assistant Principal Victor Dean entered the server room without knocking. Victor rarely visited the basement unless the internet failed or a donor presentation needed fixing. Yet now he stood beneath the cold fluorescent lights, holding a printed list of security files. Principal Rebecca Lawson followed him and quietly closed the door. On Kevin's monitor, the cafeteria timeline still showed the same impossible gap. 31 seconds missing from two separate cameras at exactly 12:14 p.m. Kevin had already copied the access logs to a private drive, but neither administrator knew that. Rebecca placed the document beside his keyboard. Internal Affairs has requested a preservation of records, she said. We need the system cleaned before we hand anything over. Kevin looked at the list. It included the cafeteria access log, administrative login history, and backup records from the afternoon Aaliyah was attacked. Cleaned, he asked. Victor leaned against the desk. Remove corrupted entries. Anything that could be misunderstood. Kevin turned toward them. Those entries aren't corrupted. Someone used an administrator account to delete footage. Rebecca's expression hardened. You are not qualified to make accusations. I'm the IT director. Kevin replied, determining whether a file was manually deleted is exactly what I'm qualified to do. Victor stepped closer and lowered his voice. Delete the logs. Kevin, call it a system malfunction. You'll keep your job. And this school avoids a scandal. Kevin refused. He told them the deletion request itself would become evidence if they continued. Rebecca stared at him for several seconds, then collected the paper. Think carefully about your loyalty, she said before leaving. The following morning, Kevin's building access card stopped working. A security guard handed him a suspension notice, accusing him of mishandling confidential student data. His email account had been disabled, his office sealed, and Victor Dean had been appointed temporary supervisor of the surveillance system. While the administration worked to erase digital evidence, Brandon Cole attacked the witnesses who still carried it. He cornered a sophomore named Lucas Ward behind the gym. After hearing that Lucas had recorded part of the cafeteria incident, Brandon demanded the phone. Lucas refused and tried to walk away. But Brandon snatched it from his hand and slammed it against the concrete wall until the screen shattered. Now you didn't see anything, he said. Olivia Grant immediately launched another video online. This one stitched together from old classroom clips showing Aaliyah arguing with a teacher over a wrong grade and raising her voice during basketball practice. None of the scenes involved violence, but Olivia added sirens, red warning graphics, and the caption, proof she was dangerous, before the cafeteria. Thousands of viewers accepted it without question. By afternoon, anonymous accounts were demanding that Aaliyah be expelled permanently. Principal Lawson cited the new posts as proof that the school's decision to suspend her had been justified. Every lie created another lie, and every lie made the truth more difficult to hear. Yet the system's reach stopped at the edge of school property. 3 days after the attack, a delivery company supervisor reviewed footage from a refrigerated food truck that had arrived beside the cafeteria loading dock at noon. The truck carried an exterior safety camera designed to document accidents during deliveries. Its wide-angle lens faced through the cafeteria's glass side doors and recorded the confrontation from beginning to end. It captured Carter grabbing Aaliyah, Ethan blocking her escape, Olivia directing her live stream, Brandon circling for a better angle, and Officer Pierce watching from only a few yards away. It also recorded Victor Dean entering the cafeteria moments after the attack and speaking privately to Pierce before either man checked on Aaliyah. The footage was independent, time-stamped, and stored on the delivery company's remote server. No one at Roosevelt Heights had access to it. That evening, Aaliyah heard a vehicle stop outside her home. By the time she reached the window, it was gone. A small padded envelope lay near the front door. There was no return address, No name, and no written message. Inside was a black USB drive, marked only with the date of the cafeteria attack. Isaiah warned her not to plug it into a personal computer. He placed it in an evidence bag and contacted Detective Monica Reyes. Before midnight, Internal Affairs opened the drive inside a secure forensic lab. The first file was the delivery truck video. The second contained audio recorded moments after the attack. A man's voice clear, close, and unmistakable said, "Remove the 31 seconds before anyone requests them." Then Principal Lawson answered, "Make sure the girl becomes the problem." The USB did not merely prove that Aaliyah had been assaulted. It suggested that the cover-up had begun while she was still lying injured in the cafeteria, and what investigators found in the remaining files was about to shake the entire city. The black USB drive never entered the Brooks family computer. Captain Isaiah Brooks sealed it inside an evidence pouch, photographed the envelope in which it had arrived, and documented the exact time it was found outside his home. Aaliyah watched from the dining table, her injured arm secured in a sling. As her father treated the anonymous delivery with the same discipline he would use at a crime scene, he did not celebrate. He did not assume the files were authentic. He understood that evidence strong enough to destroy a cover-up could also be bait designed to compromise an investigation. Detective Monica Reyes arrived less than an hour later with a digital forensics technician and a locked transport case. Before taking possession of the drive, Monica asked Aaliyah to describe everything she had seen and heard the vehicle outside, the envelope near the door, and whether anyone had contacted her beforehand. Aaliyah answered carefully. Then Monica turned to Isaiah. "From this point forward, you are the reporting parent, not the captain," she said. Isaiah nodded. "That is exactly how I want it." The drive was taken directly to Internal Affairs, where it was opened on an isolated forensic workstation with no connection to the department's network. The first file confirmed what the school had tried to erase. The delivery truck's exterior camera showed the cafeteria through the glass loading doors from a wide, unobstructed angle. Carter seized Aaliyah's wrist. Ethan stepped between her and the aisle. Brandon moved closer with his phone. Olivia aimed her live stream while laughing. Then Carter forced Aaliyah's arm upward until her body folded against the table. The timestamp matched the hospital record, the lunch schedule, and the missing 31 seconds from the school's security system. The second file contained enhanced audio from the truck's cabin microphone. Officer Pierce could be heard telling Victor Dean. The main camera caught it. Victor answered. "Then make sure it didn't." Seconds later came Rebecca Lawson's voice. "We cannot lose the football program over one girl." A third folder contained server access screenshots, administrative login records, and a copied message ordering Kevin Morales to classify the deletion as routine corruption. The metadata showed no signs of alteration. Every file carried a verifiable creation time. Every time aligned with records already collected independently. Monica leaned back from the monitor and said, "This is no longer misconduct by one officer. This is coordinated evidence suppression." Kevin Morales was brought to Internal Affairs under protective conditions that same morning. His suspension badge had been deactivated, but he had preserved a private copy of the original server logs before Victor Dean locked him out. Kevin confirmed that the files on the USB matched the school's internal data. He also identified the administrator account used to erase the footage. The account belonged to Rebecca Lawson, though it had been accessed from Victor's office computer. Either she gave him the password, Kevin explained, or someone wanted the deletion to point at both of them. Monica asked whether Officer Pierce could have accessed the system remotely. Kevin hesitated, then revealed something even worse. Pierce had been issued temporary surveillance credentials the previous year, after a series of locker room thefts. Those credentials had never been revoked. 3 people had the ability to erase the footage, and all 3 had spoken within minutes of the attack. Internal Affairs moved quickly. A court-approved preservation order was delivered to Roosevelt Heights before noon. Investigators sealed the principal's office, the administration wing, the security room, and every device connected to the surveillance network. School officials were forbidden from deleting emails, wiping phones, replacing hard drives, destroying paper records, or contacting potential witnesses about their testimony. Officer Pierce's department access was suspended pending interrogation. When the order reached him, he called Rebecca Lawson 7 times in 12 minutes. She did not answer. He then attempted to enter the school through a rear employee door, claiming he needed personal equipment from his office. 2 investigators stopped him before he reached the security corridor. "You cannot remove anything," Monica told him. Pierce's calm finally cracked. "You don't understand what you're doing. This will destroy people who had nothing to do with that girl." Monica stared at him. Then they should have nothing to fear from the records. At the Brooks home, Aaliyah sat across from her father while news of the investigation began spreading through the city. Reporters gathered outside Roosevelt Heights. Parents demanded answers. Students deleted posts and changed usernames. Brandon removed the edited Cafeteria video, but screenshots and copies had already been preserved. Olivia locked her accounts. Ethan's family issued a statement calling the investigation a politically motivated attack against student athletes. Isaiah turned off the television. "They are going to make this louder before it becomes clearer." He warned Aaliyah, "They will attack your memory, your character, and anyone who supports you." Aaliyah looked at the sling around her arm. "They already did." Isaiah nodded. "Now they know the evidence can answer back." Just after midnight, Monica received an emergency call from the fire department. Smoke was pouring from the lower level of Roosevelt Heights High School. By the time firefighters entered the building, flames had consumed the main server room, the same room investigators had ordered sealed only hours earlier. The door showed signs of forced entry. The sprinkler system in that corridor had been manually disabled. Someone had waited until the school was empty, bypassed the security lock, and set fire to the machines that held years of surveillance footage. Access records, disciplinary reports, and internal communications, standing beneath the flashing lights outside the burning building. Monica called Isaiah with a single sentence. Someone just tried to destroy the entire case. But as the server racks collapsed behind the firefighters, the person responsible did not know that Kevin had preserved more than one copy, and the fire itself had created a new crime scene no school administrator could explain away. By sunrise, Roosevelt Heights High looked less like a school than a crime scene. Yellow tape stretched across the administration wing, fire trucks blocked the service road, and the bitter smell of burned plastic hung over the campus. Students gathered behind barricades, whispering into phones while reporters filmed the blackened windows of the basement server room. Inside, fire investigators moved through water, ash, and twisted metal. The sprinkler system above the destroyed racks had not malfunctioned. Its control valve had been manually closed. The server room lock showed fresh tool marks, and traces of an accelerant were found beneath 2 cabinets. Whoever started the fire had not acted in panic. The person had known exactly where the surveillance archive was stored, exactly how to enter, and exactly how to delay the automatic response long enough for the machines to burn. Detective Monica Reyes stood beside the lead fire investigator as he pointed toward the damaged doorway. "This was deliberate," he said. "Someone came here to destroy records." Monica looked through the smoke-stained corridor toward Principal Rebecca Lawson's sealed office. The assault on Aaliyah had begun as school violence. The attempt to bury it had now become arson, obstruction, and possible conspiracy. The person responsible had made one critical mistake, assuming the destroyed machines held the only copies. Kevin Morales arrived at Internal Affairs carrying a padded laptop case and 2 encrypted drives. Before his suspension, he had copied the original Cafeteria access logs, system health reports, and administrator login history. He had also configured an off-site diagnostic backup months earlier, after repeated server failures. Roosevelt Heights officials had forgotten about it because the backup stored technical snapshots, not ordinary video files. Kevin opened the archive in front of Monica and a forensic examiner. It showed Victor Dean's office computer connecting to the surveillance network at 1214 p.m. Immediately after Carter injured Aaliyah, it also showed Officer Pierce's credentials authenticating from the same machine 2 minutes later. Then, at 2:13. Rebecca Lawson's account approved the permanent deletion of the selected footage. 3 separate credentials. Kevin said, that was done to spread responsibility. Each of them could claim someone else used the account. Monica asked whether the system could identify who was physically at the keyboard. Kevin opened another file. The administrative computer had a built-in camera used for remote meetings. A cached thumbnail from that minute showed Victor seated in front of the screen while Pierce stood beside him. Rebecca was visible in the reflection of a glass cabinet behind them. While investigators rebuilt the truth from digital fragments, panic spread through the students who had helped create the original lie. Brandon Cole stopped posting online. He deleted his accounts, removed the editing app from his phone, and told his parents that strangers were threatening him. But the fear came from something closer than strangers. Carter Hayes had been sending him messages every few minutes, demanding to know whether the original Cafeteria video still existed. Brandon insisted he had erased it, yet Carter did not believe him. He appeared outside Brandon's house before school, pounding on the passenger window of his car. "You told us the clip was gone," Carter shouted. "Now the police have everything." Brandon locked the doors. "The truck recorded it." "That wasn't me." Carter's face twisted with panic. Ethan said his people would handle it. Brandon stared at him. His people just burned the school. The accusation silenced them both. By afternoon, Carter's control collapsed completely. Internal affairs investigators asked him to come in with his parents for what they called a voluntary interview. He arrived, angry, and left terrified. Monica placed still images from the delivery truck video on the table one by one, Carter seizing Aaliyah's wrist, Carter forcing her arm behind her back, Carter lifting it until her shoulder failed. Beside those images, she placed screenshots of his messages with Ethan. One read, "Make her react. Brandon needs the clip." Another said, "Pierce won't touch us." Carter's attorney advised him not to speak, but Carter could no longer stay silent. It was Ethan's idea. He blurted. He said we only needed to scare her. Monica did not react, while Aaliyah Carter looked at his parents, then at the photographs. She embarrassed Ethan in history class. He made a joke about black neighborhoods, and she corrected him in front of everyone. He wanted a video that made her look violent. Carter admitted that Ethan had ordered Brandon to provoke her and Olivia to live stream the confrontation. He admitted that Officer Pierce had warned them before lunch that the cafeteria cameras had a blind angle, but when Monica asked who deleted the footage and started the fire, Carter shook his head violently. "I don't know." Ethan said adults would make it disappear. The partial confession reached Ethan Walker before investigators could summon him. His father's attorneys arrived at the school board offices and demanded that no student be questioned without legal representation. Ethan maintained that Carter had acted alone, yet his messages told a different story. Monica found him in a conference room beside his father. Grant Walker, the president of the Roosevelt Heights Athletic Foundation. Grant had funded the school's new stadium, training center, and security upgrades. He spoke as though the investigation were an insult rather than a legal process. "My son is being blamed because his family supports this community," he said. Monica placed Carter's statement on the table. Ethan's confidence slipped when she read aloud the message, promising that Pierce would protect them. Grant ordered the interview ended. But Ethan suddenly leaned forward. "You think my dad controls all this?" he said. "He doesn't." His father turned sharply. "Ethan, stop talking." But Ethan was already staring at the fire photographs. The video. The officer. Lawson. None of that started with him, Monica asked. "Then who did it start with?" Ethan swallowed. For the first time, the arrogant athlete looked like a frightened teenager trapped inside a system he had believed would always protect him. "There's someone bigger than my father," he said. someone who owns the security company, controls the school contracts, and decides who stays on the board. Grant stood so quickly his chair struck the wall. This interview was over. Monica watched them leave, then returned to Kevin's recovered files. Buried among years of invoices was the name of a private contractor connected to the cameras. Officer Pierce's equipment, and the fire suppression system that had failed at exactly the right moment. The same name appeared in a confidential email sent to Rebecca Lawson 2 hours before Aaliyah entered the cafeteria. The person protecting Ethan was not simply a wealthy parent. Someone far more powerful had built the system that erased evidence, and their identity was beginning to surface. The name buried in the recovered contracts was Adrian Vale, founder of Sentinel Civic Systems, the private company that supplied Roosevelt Heights with surveillance cameras, access control software, fire suppression monitoring, and security equipment for its school resource officers. Vale was not a parent, a teacher, or an elected member of the school board. He was more dangerous than all three because his company sat behind nearly every system investigators were trying to examine. Sentinel held contracts with 12 schools, the city police department, and 2 county offices. Grant Walker had helped introduce the company to Roosevelt Heights, but the money and influence flowed upward, not downward. Ethan's father was only a donor with connections. Adrian Vale controlled the machines that recorded evidence, the software that stored it, and the maintenance teams allowed to enter restricted rooms after hours. When Detective Monica Reyes traced the server room fire alarm, she discovered that a Sentinel administrator account had placed the suppression system into diagnostic mode 43 minutes before the flames began. The account belonged to a regional supervisor who insisted he had been home asleep. His credentials, however, had been used from an IP address assigned to Roosevelt Heights Administration Building. The investigation turned back toward Principal Rebecca Lawson, Assistant Principal Victor Dean, and Officer Daniel Pierce. Separately, each had described the cafeteria incident as a sudden misunderstanding. Together, their records showed something coordinated. Rebecca had called Victor less than a minute after Carter twisted Aaliyah's arm. Victor had entered the cafeteria, spoken privately with Pierce, and returned directly to his office. Pierce certified his report before Aaliyah reached the nurse. Victor's computer accessed the surveillance system at 1214, and Rebecca's credentials approved the deletion. Later that afternoon, all three joined a conference call with Sentinel Civic Systems. No official meeting had been scheduled. No minutes had been filed, yet the call lasted 27 minutes, beginning just after Brandon's edited video started spreading online. Monica questioned Rebecca first. The principal entered internal affairs with an attorney, and the practiced confidence of someone accustomed to controlling a room. She admitted that she wanted to protect the school's reputation, but denied ordering evidence destroyed. We had hundreds of students in panic. She said, "My responsibility was to restore order." Monica placed the recovered audio transcript before her. Rebecca's own voice appeared on the page. "Make sure the girl becomes the problem." Rebecca dismissed it as a phrase taken out of context. Then Monica showed her the login approval connected to the missing 31 seconds. Rebecca claimed Victor must have used her password. "So your assistant principal stole your credentials?" Monica asked. Rebecca did not answer, and Officer Pierce happened to be standing beside him. Still no answer. And Sentinel received a call immediately afterward. Rebecca's attorney ended the interview. Victor Dean proved less disciplined. He denied touching the camera system until investigators showed him the cached image of his face at the computer. He then claimed Pierce had ordered him to retrieve footage for a law enforcement review. When Monica produced the command that permanently deleted the clip, Victor changed his story again. "Rebecca told me the footage violated student privacy," he said. "She said it couldn't leave the building." Monica reminded him that deleting evidence of an assault did not protect privacy. Victor's hands began to shake. He admitted that Rebecca had instructed him to create the 31-second gap, but insisted that she was acting under pressure from someone at Sentinel. They said if the video became public, the football funding would disappear. He whispered, The stadium project. The scholarships. Everything. Monica asked who had spoken to Rebecca. Victor stared at the table. Adrian Valle. Officer Pierce tried to present himself as a minor participant. He claimed he had trusted the administrators and had written his report based on what students told him. Monica responded by playing the delivery truck audio. Pierce's voice filled the interview room. The main camera caught it. Then Victor's reply, make sure it didn't. Pierce's face tightened. Monica asked why he had failed to intervene when Carter forced Aaliyah's arm behind her back. Pierce said he feared that stepping in might escalate the crowd. She asked why his report claimed Aaliyah declined medical care when he filed it 9 minutes before the nurse examined her. He blamed a template. She asked why his temporary surveillance credentials had been used during the deletion. He said someone else must have copied them. Every explanation shifted responsibility elsewhere. Yet every digital trace placed him inside the same chain of decisions. The motive became clearer when Kevin Morales reconstructed the archived email server from an off-site backup. The fire had destroyed the local machines, but copies of administrative messages remained in Sentinel's cloud environment. At first, investigators found routine discussions about ticket sales, athletic insurance, and stadium renovations. Then Kevin uncovered a hidden folder labeled Operational Continuity. The messages inside were not routine. They showed Rebecca, Victor, Pierce, Grant Walker, and Sentinel executives discussing previous complaints involving football players. Injuries had been reclassified as accidents. Parent reports had been delayed until deadlines expired. Surveillance footage had been marked corrupted. In exchange, Sentinel received contract extensions. The Athletic Foundation kept its donors, and the school preserved the winning program that attracted media attention and enrollment. The cafeteria attack had not created the system, it had exposed it. One email, sent by Adrian Vale 6 months earlier, ordered Rebecca to notify Sentinel before releasing any footage involving high-value athletic personnel. Another warned Pierce that disciplinary arrests could jeopardize the district's public safety partnership. A third listed students whose complaints had been contained. Aaliyah's name had been added less than 40 minutes after Carter injured her. Beside it was the phrase, aggressor narrative approved. Kevin continued restoring deleted messages while Monica contacted the district superintendent. Near midnight, one final email emerged from the server archive. It had been sent by Adrian Vale to Rebecca Lawson, Victor Dean, Officer Pierce, and Grant Walker on the morning of Aaliyah's first day. The subject line read, Program Protection Protocol. The message referenced concerns that Carter, Ethan, and other athletes were becoming reckless, but warned that public discipline could trigger a contract review and donor withdrawal. The final instruction appeared alone in bold letters. Protect the football program at all costs. Monica read the sentence twice. It transformed the case from a frantic cover-up after an unexpected assault into evidence of a standing policy. These people had not improvised when Aaliyah was hurt. They had followed a system already built to sacrifice students whenever the football program was threatened. Bidam. The superintendent had placed Rebecca Lawson and Victor Dean on administrative leave. Officer Pierce was suspended without police authority. Subpoenas were prepared for Sentinel Civic Systems, and investigators moved to freeze the company's school security records before Adrian Vale could erase them. But the evidence had already begun leaking beyond the investigation. Parents demanded to know whether their children's complaints appeared in the hidden folder. Former students contacted reporters. Teachers admitted they had been pressured to change disciplinary records. The district could no longer contain the scandal behind closed doors. That afternoon, the Roosevelt Heights Board of Education announced an emergency public meeting in the city auditorium. Rebecca, Victor, Pierce, Grant Walker, and representatives of Sentinel Civic Systems were ordered to appear. The delivery truck video, the deleted security logs, the altered report, and the recovered emails would be entered into the record. Hundreds of parents registered to speak. Students planned to attend carrying copies of the phrase that had protected the powerful and punished the injured. protect the football program at all costs. For years, those words had operated as a private command. At the board meeting, they would be read aloud before the entire city. The city auditorium had never held so much anger in one room. Every seat was filled long before the emergency school board meeting began. Parents crowded the aisles. Students stood along the walls. Reporters lined the back with cameras already recording. Across the stage sat Principal Rebecca Lawson, Assistant Principal Victor Din, Officer Daniel Pierce, Grant Walker, and two attorneys representing Sentinel Civic Systems. None of them looked at Aaliyah Brooks. She sat in the front row beside her father, her injured arm still supported by a sling. The swelling had begun to fade, but the pain remained every time she moved. Behind her, students who had once laughed at the edited video now whispered nervously. Some had reposted Olivia's hashtag. Others had mocked Aaliyah in the hallways. Tonight, they were about to see what they had helped turn into entertainment. The board chair called the meeting to order. But the room did not become quiet until Detective Monica Reyes walked toward the projector. She explained that the footage had been verified through independent timestamps, delivery records, medical documentation, and forensic analysis. No school administrator had controlled the source. No student had edited it. Then the lights dimmed. The screen showed the cafeteria exactly as it had been that afternoon: loud, crowded, ordinary. Aaliyah entered carrying her tray and sat alone. Ethan approached first. Carter followed. Brandon raised his phone. Olivia began live streaming. The audience watched Ethan lean across the table and make the racist joke that Brandon's public clip had removed. They saw Carter knock the milk onto Aaliyah's shoes. They heard her say, calmly, "I'm leaving." Then Carter seized her wrist. Aaliyah looked down. She did not need to watch the next part. She could still feel it. On the screen, Carter twisted her arm behind her back. Ethan blocked the aisle. Brandon moved closer instead of helping. Olivia laughed and told her viewers not to miss what was coming. Aaliyah asked Carter to release her. He forced her arm higher. The crack echoed through the auditorium speakers. No one in the room moved. The video continued. Aaliyah nearly collapsed against the table. Carter stepped away, smiling. Students in the cafeteria began laughing. Then Officer Pierce appeared in the frame. He had been standing close enough to witness the entire assault. The audience saw him look directly at Carter, then turn toward Aaliyah and order, "Sit down. Don't make this bigger than it needs to be." A woman in the auditorium gasped. Someone behind her whispered. He saw everything. The footage showed Victor Dean entering moments later and speaking quietly with Pierce. Principal Lawson appeared at the cafeteria doors but never approached Aaliyah. Instead, she looked toward the students holding phones and called Victor aside. The recording ended with Aaliyah being led away while Carter, Ethan, Brandon, and Olivia remained untouched. Monica then played Brandon's edited version. The contrast was brutal. Carter's attack had vanished. Ethan's racist comments were gone. Officer Pierce's failure had been removed. Only Aaliyah's expression after the injury remained framed to make her look furious and unstable. Next came screenshots of Olivia's post number, "Crazy New Girl." Dangerous from day one. And New Girl finally learned her place. Monica displayed messages showing Olivia instructing followers to report Aaliyah's account and pressure the school to expel her. Then she showed the server logs, the 31-second deletion, Pierce's early report, and the recovered email containing the order, "Protect the football program at all costs." The auditorium fell into a silence deeper than shock. Students who had laughed at the video lowered their heads. Teachers stared at Lawson. Parents looked toward Pierce with open disgust. Brandon sat in the witness section, pale and shaking. Olivia's mother covered her mouth. Carter refused to look at the screen. Rebecca Lawson finally reached for her microphone. The situation was more complicated than this presentation suggests. The audience erupted. "Complicated," a father shouted. "We just watched a child's arm being twisted." Victor leaned toward his attorney. Pierce remained rigid. but sweat had formed along his forehead. Grant Walker tried to leave, only to discover investigators standing near the exit. The board chair called for order and announced that Captain Isaiah Brooks had been invited to speak as both Aaliyah's father and a senior police official. Isaiah rose slowly. The room quieted again. Many expected anger. Some expected him to demand arrests. Others expected him to use his rank to condemn everyone involved. He walked to the microphone, looked at the board, then at the audience. "I will not be giving the statement tonight," he said. Confusion moved through the room. Isaiah continued. "My position gave me access to a process many families never receive. That is exactly why this moment should not belong to me. My daughter was the one assaulted. My daughter was the one called a liar. My daughter was the one suspended while the people who hurt her returned to class." He turned toward the front row. "Aaliyah, this is your truth. They should hear it from you." For several seconds, she did not move. Then Aaliyah stood. Her father stepped away from the microphone and offered his hand. Not to lead her, but to steady her if she needed it. She walked onto the stage alone. 400 students had watched her pain become a joke. Thousands had shared the lie. Now the same city waited for her to speak. Aaliyah placed her uninjured hand against the podium, looked directly at the people who had tried to erase her, and drew a slow breath. What she said next would change Roosevelt Heights forever. Aaliyah Brooks stood quietly behind the podium as more than 500 people waited for her to speak. The auditorium, which only minutes earlier had been filled with whispers, arguments, and outrage, had become almost completely silent. Every camera was pointed toward her. Every reporter stopped typing. Students who had laughed at her in the cafeteria stared at the stage with expressions that ranged from guilt to disbelief. Principal Rebecca Lawson sat motionless beside Assistant Principal Victor Dean. Officer Daniel Pierce avoided looking in Aaliyah's direction. Ethan Walker kept his eyes fixed on the floor. Carter Hayes looked exhausted after days of questioning, while Brandon Cole and Olivia Grant appeared to realize for the first time that edited videos and online popularity had consequences far beyond social media. Captain Isaiah Brooks remained in the front row, saying nothing. He did not stand behind his daughter. He did not place a reassuring hand on her shoulder. This was not his moment. It belonged entirely to Aaliyah. She adjusted the microphone, took a slow breath, and looked across the audience before speaking in a calm voice that carried to every corner of the room. "If my father had never become a police officer," she began, "what happened to me would still have been wrong. If my last name were different, if I had no one with a badge waiting for me at home, my arms still would have been twisted. My pain still would have been real. And the truth still would have deserved to be heard. Justice should never depend on who your parents are. It should depend on what actually happened." No one interrupted. No one applauded. The silence itself became a sign that the room understood every word. She continued by describing the loneliness that followed the attack rather than the pain in her shoulder. She spoke about walking through hallways where people refused to sit beside her, opening her phone to thousands of strangers, calling her violent, and watching adults choose convenience over honesty. She thanked Kevin Morales for refusing to erase evidence, Emma Collins for believing frightened students when others would not, Detective Monica Reyes for following facts instead of rumors, and Mia Foster for risking everything to preserve the truth even after her family had been threatened. "People keep calling me brave," Aaliyah said. But bravery wasn't standing here today. The real bravery belonged to everyone who could have stayed silent and decided not to. Her words echoed through the auditorium long after she stepped away from the microphone. For several moments, nobody moved. Then one parent stood and began clapping. Another followed. Soon the entire auditorium rose to its feet. The applause was not loud because people were celebrating. It was loud because they were ashamed of how long they had believed a lie. When the applause finally faded, Detective Monica Reyes returned to the podium carrying a thick investigation file. She announced that Internal Affairs had completed its preliminary findings based on forensic evidence medical documentation, independent surveillance footage, recovered communications, and sworn witness statements. Officer Daniel Pierce was immediately suspended without police authority and referred for criminal and administrative investigation for failing to intervene during an assault, filing a knowingly inaccurate report, and obstructing an official investigation through the suppression of evidence. Principal Rebecca Lawson and Assistant Principal Victor Dean were formally removed from their positions after investigators concluded that they had deliberately concealed evidence, violated mandatory school safety procedures, and coordinated false narratives that blamed the victim rather than addressing the assault. Carter Hayes faced disciplinary action and legal proceedings consistent with the evidence showing that he physically injured another student. Ethan Walker was held accountable for planning and encouraging the confrontation. Brandon Cole faced consequences for deliberately editing and distributing misleading footage intended to damage Aaliyah's reputation, while Olivia Grant was disciplined for coordinating online harassment and encouraging students to target the victim through social media campaigns. Monica emphasized that each person's responsibility would be determined individually according to the evidence, rather than by association or public pressure. The investigation also recognized those who had protected the truth instead of hiding it. Kevin Morales was fully reinstated as Director of Information Technology after forensic experts confirmed that his decision to preserve independent backup records had prevented the destruction of critical evidence. The school board publicly acknowledged that, without his refusal to delete the server logs, the investigation might never have uncovered the coordinated cover-up. Mia Foster and her family were placed under formal witness protection measures during the remainder of the investigation, ensuring they could testify without intimidation or retaliation. Emma Collins received official recognition for documenting concerns despite repeated pressure to remain silent. Detective Monica Reyes reminded the audience that institutions survive only when individuals choose integrity over convenience. Systems fail, she said, but people decide whether those failures become permanent. The Board of Education then voted unanimously to approve a sweeping series of reforms at Roosevelt Heights High School. An independent surveillance storage system would replace the previous network, ensuring that school administrators could no longer alter or delete security footage without external authorization. Anonymous bullying and misconduct reporting channels would become available to every student, allowing concerns to bypass school administrators when necessary. Every teacher, administrator, and school resource officer would complete mandatory annual training focused on recognizing, preventing, and responding appropriately to bullying, discrimination, and student violence. The district also approved a comprehensive victim support program offering counseling, legal guidance, and academic assistance for students affected by harassment or retaliation, along with formal protections for witnesses willing to come forward. These reforms were presented not as a gesture of apology, but as structural changes intended to prevent future abuse of authority. As families slowly left the auditorium, reporters rushed toward officials. Investigators gathered evidence for the next stage of the legal process, and students quietly reflected on everything they had witnessed. Some approached Aaliyah to apologize. Others admitted they had shared the edited video without questioning whether it was true. She accepted their apologies without pretending the damage had never happened. Outside, Captain Isaiah Brooks waited beside his car while his daughter walked down the courthouse steps toward him. He smiled, not because the case was over, but because she had found her own voice without needing his badge to speak for her. The city would remember the scandal for years, but Aaliyah hoped people would remember something even more important, the lesson that emerged from it. Her father's badge did not bring the truth into the light. It was the courage of ordinary people who refused to destroy evidence, refused to surrender to intimidation, and refused to stay silent that allowed justice to prevail. The moment the bullies twisted the black girl's arm, a sickening crack echoed through the cafeteria, and instead of stopping them, the crowd laughed. Hundreds of students watched as her pain became entertainment, while the one officer standing nearby looked away as if justice had gone on lunch break. Then the edited video hit social media, turning the victim into the villain overnight. They thought they had silenced one quiet girl forever. What they didn't know was that every lie leaves a trail, and the truth was about to expose everyone who chose power over justice. Where are you watching from? Tell us in the comments. And stay until the very end, because the ending will leave you speechless. One slap, hundreds of laughing students, and one bully who thought the quiet black girl would never fight back. At Easton Ridge High, Dylan Mercer ruled the school with fear, while everyone else watched in silence. But what he didn't know was that the new girl he humiliated had spent years mastering the one thing he could never understand: discipline. He thought he was creating another victim. Instead,